The Trudeau government is in collapse as we speak. Justin Trudeau is more unpopular than ever, if that's even possible. Some would say that Canadians even loathe him. One of his main opponents, Maxime Bernier, is the leader of the People's Party of Canada, and he joins us today on Redacted to discuss not just this current collapse, but how it's been a long time coming and what his platform is to save Canada from its own chaos. So thank you for joining us, sir. It's a pleasure to have you on Redacted.
I'm very pleased to be with you, Natali. Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. I want to say that many of your fans on X absolutely insisted that we speak to you because that you have such, I want to say, a galvanized following, and it's wonderful to see. Can you explain to us the current chaos in Canadian Parliament and why so many have such a strong appetite for the end of the Trudeau, I'm going to say regime, if you will, and why this is a long time coming?
Yes, absolutely. The Trudeau government never balanced the budget here in Canada, and we have as a minister, not foreign, but finance minister, Madame Freeland, and they had a discussion a couple of weeks ago between Trudeau and his finance minister about the deficit. And as you know, the Trudeau government is not popular. And he won't be able to win the next election that will be in 2025. And he was trying to buy votes with more money that we don't have and giving some goodies to Canadians. But Freeland was not, in agreement with that. And they had a couple of discussions and she resigned yesterday. So there's a new finance minister right now. And also because Trudeau tried everything last summer to be able to gain a little bit more popularity in the polls, but that was not successful. People still remember what the Trudeau government did to us Canadians during COVID, all the lockdowns and the draconian measures, all the deficit and the woke ideology. So the Trudeau government is a socialist government. So it tried everything during last summer. That's not working. Now the members of parliament, the liberal members of parliament, are fed up with their leader. And some of them, 40 of them, came publicly and said that Trudeau must resign. So that's the situation right now. And Trudeau said yesterday that he won't. I don't know if he will be able to be prime minister until the end of this year or early next year. But that's happening right now here in our country. And add to that the fact that your new president is teasing Trudeau and saying that Canada can be the 51st state. And also he is saying that he may impose 25% tariffs on Canada, on our trade with the US. So all that, it's a very important and dangerous situation for us here. And Trudeau is not the one that will be able to negotiate with President Trump. So that's happening right now. I don't know if Trudeau will resign this week, today, or next year. But what I can tell you, Natali, is that the Trudeau government won't be able to win the next election.
It must be very upsetting for a narcissist when your constant lecturing of the people about ideals doesn't maintain popularity, when it shows that you cannot maintain a standard of living for them. And so he must be very confused because he's been able to just coast on these media values and virtues for so long, right?
Oh, yeah. He was the king of the woke ideology in Canada and around the globe. His government was and still promote the DI philosophy and the gender ideology. And because of President Trump, I must say that now we have that debate. For the last 6 years, I was the only leader of a national party in Canada that was speaking about the woke ideology and saying that there's only two sexes. All these other leaders, including the Conservative Party, that is conservative only in name, was not speaking about that. But now, it is in the news in Canada. The mainstream media he is a little bit speaking about what President Trump wants to do. And that's good. Now that's more and more popular, and people are fed up with that. You have here in Canada boys, playing with little girls in sport. So we must end that. And that's the common sense. And more people now understand. And also add to that the economy, Natali, our standard of living is going down here in Canada. And we have the inflation that is about, the real inflation must be about 6 and 8%. But the official one coming from the government with their data, they said that it's 2%, but everybody knows that it's more than that. So the economy is not going well. We have that mass immigration, open borders policy. So it would be impossible for Trudeau to win the next election and maybe to stay in government until the next election.
Well, one of the comments I got when I was preparing for this interview was from a viewer saying people really like Maxime Bernier, but they're worried that you would split the vote with Pierre Poilievre, and then they'd be stuck with Trudeau again. So I validate that as a concern because Trudeau seems the worst case scenario. But what do you have to say to a comment like that?
Oh, I have a good news to tell them. The good news is, just look at the polls here in Canada. Trudeau won't be able to win the next election. If you look at the polls and the focus group that the conservative and the mainstream media are doing, Trudeau won't be able to win. Actually, Trudeau is 22 points behind the conservative, the leader of the conservative. In Canada, to have a majority government, you need to have, maybe 5 points, a little bit more than the second political party. The Poilievre is at 22 points in advance. So for sure, Poilievre will win. Poilievre may win the biggest majority in the history of our country. What I'm telling people, now it's the time to vote for your values. We are the only populist free market political party in Canada that is putting Canadian first and our country first. Vote for your values, and Trudeau won't be elected. People are voting against Trudeau at the next election, and we will be able to grow and to influence and push Poilievre in the right direction because he is a globalist and he's not fighting for Canadians. He's okay with the Paris Accord, with the UN Global Compact on migration. He won't have a moratorium on immigration.
We're talking about Poilievre right now, right? We're not talking about Trudeau. Poilievre. Okay, right. So yes, because he has not spoken out about aid to Ukraine, which has tanked Canada's government along with other Western nations. He does not talk about curbing immigration to the same extent as you do. These are very common sense platforms for those of us who actually live in North America, but they call you an extremist for it. So can you expand on that now that I'm sorry, I wasn't sure if we were talking about Poilievre or not. Tell me about his platform that seems a bit like maybe controlled opposition or a globalist in disguise, as you would call it.
Yeah, I was speaking about Poilievre and Trudeau on these important issues. They are the same. Immigration, and also the same as, on the globalist issue, the UN Compact on migration and all that. So Poilievre and Trudeau are the same. So for me, if you're a real conservative and you want to put our country first, we are the only alternative. So it's like, the war in Ukraine, like you said, Poilievre was asking Trudeau, the prime minister, to give more money to that corrupt government in Ukraine. The federal government gave about, here in Canada, $20 billion to Ukraine. It's not our war. And I said that, a long time ago, that we must promote peace and prosperity. And, I like what President Trump is saying about the war in Ukraine, and he's for peace. So on the most important issues, Natali, we are like President Trump, but Poilievre, the conservative, is like the liberals.
Right. And so let's maybe take those things one by one, because I would love your opinion on your immigration policy, because it seems like this is a distinction I read this weekend in Vivek Ramaswamy's book that I hadn't thought of it this way, is that it's fine to be a nationalist. What we don't want is ethno-nationalists, people who say Canadians must have white skin or be of European descent, because Canada, like the United States, is a melting pot. We love the idea of welcoming immigrants in a controlled manner. That does not make us racist. That doesn't make us ethno-nationalists. So that seems to be your platform too. Would you like to expand on that?
Oh, absolutely. It's our platform. We had candidates, and we will have candidates from different faith, from different ethnicity. And for me, the color of your skin, it's not important. You must share our values. And if you share Western civilization values, you are welcome in our party. So, but on immigration, you're right. In Canada, it's a little bit worse than in US, because we have another legislation called the Multiculturalism Act. We are promoting multiculturalism, and that's a big failure in Europe, in France, in UK, and in Canada. So what is happening with our immigration? We are saying to our new immigrants, you can come here and keep your values, and and we will promote, the federal government will promote your values. And instead of promoting Canadian values, our history as a country, our culture. So we have ghettos now because of that in immigration in different cities. We don't want that. We want a newcomer, an immigrant, to come here, to share our values, to participate in our society. And yes, that person will keep a flavor of his ethnic, of his culture, and that's okay. But we want them to be part of our country. But now that's not the case with mass immigration and with the Multiculturalism Act in Canada. That's what Trudeau is promoting. And Trudeau said that Canada is the first post-national state. And with his policies, he's doing everything for our country to be like that. So I'm promoting our country. I'm promoting Western civilization values. And on immigration, for example, there's no screening anymore. There's no screening on our immigrant. There's no interviews with them. We are welcoming everybody. And when President Trump said that I will impose 25% tariffs if you don't change, and he said that Canada is a threat to the national security of the U.S. And he's right about that. He's right. And our federal government is a threat to our national security here in Canada. And I will tell you why. For example, the last 3 years, approximately 400 terror suspects were stopped at your border, and 80% of them were coming from Canada. So same thing for the illegals. Last year at your border, uh, your government was able to stop 200,000 illegals crossing the border, the Canadian border, to go to the US. So, yes, we are a threat to your national security and to our national security. We must stop that mass immigration, and we must deport all these illegals. That's not the policy of the Trudeau government right now.
And well, the Trudeau government and their liberal mayors have proposed increasing taxes on property owners in order to pay for this mass migration. And so, do you think Canadians, the regular, normal, working Canadian, understands they are subsidizing this in a very expensive way?
Oh, yeah, they are actually. And they know that. And that's why Trudeau is not popular. And that's why, right now, speaking about, a moratorium on immigration, nobody can say that you are a racist speaking like that. They said that in 2019 when I was saying fewer immigrants. And now, we were right in 2019. But now it's a big challenge. We have also in Canada a housing crisis. It's very difficult to buy a house with that. And Polyev, actually, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, was saying that, we don't have a problem in immigration. We need to build more houses. But the solution it's a supply and demand problem. We need to stop the demand. We need to have that moratorium, and that will stop that housing crisis that we are having here in our country. So with that mass immigration, Natali, we have more and more people that are coming to our country. Because of that, yes, our economy is growing, but our economy is not growing as fast as the population that is entering into our country. And so that's why the GDP is growing in Canada, but the GDP per capita is going down and our purchasing power is going down. So the pie is growing, but our piece of the pie is smaller. And Canadians understand that the time is very tough for them. So the solution is to end that mass immigration as soon as possible.
Now, talk to me about the administrative state in Canada that continues to expand its own government powers. We saw that with the Trudeau government taking people's bank accounts. In fact, they just did it last week when there was a mayor in Ottawa who was fined for refusing to fly a pride flag. And they've seized his bank account in order to get the fine that he refuses to pay. So the executive expansion of powers of the Trudeau government is terrifying. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. And, during the COVID hysteria, I was, arrested, handcuffed, and put in jail for a non-crime before the last electoral campaign in 2021, when I was having a meeting in a park in Manitoba, speaking about our freedoms and fighting for our freedoms. I was in jail for 12 hours for a non-crime. So I know what it is. And I did fight that government in court also. I didn't win. Not only the executive and the government is growing and they are putting in place draconian measures and still now, but also our court system is woke and leftist. So we have a lot of bold reforms to do in our country. But absolutely, that happened during COVID, the COVID hysteria, with the bank account that were frozen and our freedoms was violated at that time. We had a curfew here in Montreal. I'm in Montreal. You didn't have the right to go outside after 8 o'clock p.m. until 6 o'clock a.m. So all that was against our constitution. But Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative, and Trudeau and the NDP here in Canada were okay with that. They were supporting that. So and now with the news about that mayor in Ottawa, the court is still doing things like that. It's time for a change, and that's why we as a new populist political party in Canada, we are growing step by step. We, as you may know, our first election in 2019, we had only 1.6% of the vote. At the last election, we had 5%, and we are growing. And I believe that the next election in 2025 will be our election as a young political party.
I want to circle back around to what you said about the Canadian economy, because this is something that's top of mind. And I apologize because I just finished Vivek Ramaswamy's most recent book. And this is something that stuck with me, is that when you have an administrative state that continues to put regulation upon regulation upon regulation on business owners, on workers, on the economy in general, using these unproven claims of environmentalism, who benefits, he says, is China. You can extrapolate that to any country that has a lack of regulations that is allowing free government forces. So is that something that it seems to me that that's something you stand for? Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. It is happening in our country right now. You have all the mainstream political parties, the establishment political parties, including the fake conservative, that Paris Accord, they're online with that. They want to achieve Paris Accord goals. And the only difference between Trudeau and Poilievre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservatives, said we won't impose a carbon tax, but he will impose more regulations on businesses to be able to achieve the Paris Accord targets. So, he is part of that globalist ideas that the climate is a danger for us and we must regulate everything. But when the federal government or when any government is doing that, it's you don't have the economic growth that you're supposed to have. So our position on that is, fewer regulations, climate change. We will withdraw from the Paris Accord. We don't want to participate in that. We are a sovereign country. We can do it. So, but yes, that is affecting our economy. And right now, our deficit in Canada is $60 billion. $60 billion for a country of 40 million people, it's huge. And actually, just the interest on our debt, we are paying $50 billion just on interest on our debt. And the budget of our national defense is $50 billion. So all that, and Poilievre is not speaking about cutting and balancing the budget. That's not part of what he's saying. It's not part of his platform. So that's why I'm putting Poilievre and Trudeau in the same boat. We need to change that. We need to be able to balance the budget, having a smaller government, so you'll have more freedom. If you have more freedom, you'll have more prosperity.
Yes. Well, would you call yourself, I mean, it seems to me, you don't have to wear this label, but what school of economics would you say you are a fan of?
Mises, Hayek, Ron Paul, and
Austrian
I can be
economics,
called.
then, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And I can be called a libertarian. I'm okay with that. But also, you must know, Natali, that when we created this party, based on 4 principles, and individual freedom, personal responsibility, fairness, and respect. And yes, our economic policy is more, a free market economic policies. Contrary to President Trump, we are for freedom. I know that President Trump is proposing a mercantile trade policy to put the American first. But I believe that we can put Canadian first and having a good agreement with the US by having a fair and a good free trade. We as a country, we just have to fix the problem that we have at our borders and stopping that. We must secure our borders. And actually, Trudeau is not doing that. Trudeau just said that he will spend a couple of $1 million to buy drones and some helicopters to be able to secure our borders. But we need more than that. Like I said, we need to stop that mass immigration and deporting all these illegals.
Right. And we see a lot of Canadian outcomes that are in lockstep with the United States because of a liberal policy. So crime rates are also high in Canada. And so is that also a motivating factor for your candidacy?
Yeah, absolutely. The Trudeau government is experiencing on drugs. That government wants drug addicts to be able to have access to hard drugs. That's their policy. We must be tough on crime, and that we must change that. It's not working. We must not allow these drug addicts to have access to more drugs. We must do the opposite, and to be sure that we are giving the needs and the help that they need. They don't need more drugs, but for the Trudeau government, and now we are very soft on crimes and drugs, and we need to do the opposite.
Yes. Now, one of the things we see Justin Trudeau doing is he loves the globalist organizations. He loves the WEF. He loves to travel for the G8. He gets in lockstep with anything the EU wants, anything the United States wants. He's kind of like a sidekick. With them, as always, is Justin Trudeau. One thing that in the United States we're very concerned about is the World Health Organization's pandemic treaty and usurping sovereignty in order to put in place pandemic measures and then anything else. And so where do you stand on the World Health Organization's pandemic preparedness plan?
We won't sign that. We must not be part of that. We are a sovereign country. Healthcare is a provincial jurisdiction here in Canada. We have all these experts that can help us if we have a crisis. But we had a fake pandemic, in 2020. Actually, right now there's a bill in Parliament. That bill is not enforced, and if that bill passed, it will take all the World Health Organization philosophy and ideas to be part in our legislation. So that bill must not pass. But Trudeau is pushing that. Actually, my position is the same as President Trump. Let's withdraw from that. And our position on all these globalist organizations is to, we will give them money if they promote our values. And if not, they won't have any money from our country. I can tell you we will save a lot of money because we will defund the UN and all these international organizations. We need to bring back all that money here in Canada for Canadians.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question. The media's love affair with Justin Trudeau has really been something to observe. I often call him a media darling. I don't mean that he is a darling person. I mean that he can do no wrong in the eyes of the media. For a long time, he had that honeymoon, much like Jacinda Ardern from New Zealand. So it's been interesting to observe that. And now the media is being forced to admit that he has basically destroyed the economy in Canada and made other major mistakes. But your candidacy doesn't necessarily pick up the spoils of the media's love affair with Trudeau because you've been critical of the media. You've talked about cutting funding to state broadcasters. And so how do you contend with that? Or alternatively, like here in the United States, we have to contend with it less because no one trusts them anymore. So is that really a battle or isn't it? What's your observation of the media treatment of Trudeau and how do you then get them to cover you fairly?
You're absolutely right about the way that they were, giving all that visibility to Trudeau for all the things that he was doing, and they were promoting him. But now that's turning a little bit because it's so evident that that government is not working anymore, and actually their policies are hurting our country. So now the media has to change a little bit, and that's just happening recently. But for me, as the opposite of Trudeau and the conservative, they don't want to give me visibility because they may know that I will grow faster as a political party. So they are doing to me and to my party what they did to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the state when he was running as an independent. He didn't have any coverage from the mainstream media, but he did a good campaign by being with, independent media, influencers and podcasters. So my philosophy and my strategy is to try to be more active on social media. And I'm very pleased that you took your time to invite me to your show because your show also, a lot of Canadians are watching your show. So that's a nice opportunity for me to promote our ideas. But that will be my challenge and my goal, to be more active on social media, to try to have our ideas out there. But only the fact that President Trump was elected and he's speaking like me, who I'm speaking like him on all these important issues, at least the media has to speak about that, and they are promoting our ideas without promoting us. So, but anyway, that's a good news. And I must say that they did everything for me to not participate in the national debates that we had at our last electoral campaign. They created a new rule and they said for Bernier, you need to have 4% of the vote to be able to participate in the national debates. But we had 5%. So the good news, Natali, is at the next election in 2025, I will be at the national stage. I will participate in these debates against Trudeau and Poilievre if Trudeau is still there. And that will give us at least a couple of days of visibility in the mainstream media. But the big challenge is, like you just said, the trust in our mainstream media in Canada is a little bit higher than it is in the US. So that's not helping me.
Right. But if anyone provides a template for overcoming media opposition, it's President-elect Trump. Have you met him?
No. I wish I'll be able to do that, but it was a good news for us, and for us that he was elected, and all the reform that he will do that will have a huge impact. Just about the censorship, he will be sure that these big tech corporation, Google and all that, they won't be able to censor, because I was censored also, and maybe I'm still like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., but that
Yeah.
will have an impact.
Shadow
That
banned.
legislation that it will pass, it will have an impact on us and on me in Canada. So it's a good news that he's elected, and I wish him big success.
I have to say, speaking about these types of things, speaking against the green agenda, speaking against, media representations of politicians, speaking against COVID pandemic measures and globalist agendas, they might have felt shocking to a lot of us, myself included, former liberal, just 3 or 4 years ago. But the ability to have this conversation and it not feel extreme in the least feels like progress for all North Americans, maybe all Westerners. So I want to say how much of a pleasure it's been to meet you, and I will be following your candidacy with interest. If you'd like to find out more about Maxime Bernier, he's on X. It's at Maxime Bernier, and he also represents, again, the People's Party of Canada. So thank you so much for being so generous with your time and coming on Redacted. I hope we can speak again in the future.
Thank you, Natali. Have a nice day. Thank you very much.